Nigeria must reduce its dependence on borrowing and build a stronger, more reliable economy. And this is what the Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Mr. Wale Edun, said. The minister, speaking on Tuesday at the management retreat of the Nigerian Revenue Service, NRS, in Abuja, says Nigeria needs to stabilize its finances and fund development sustainably.
Wale Edun warned that the global financial environment has become increasingly hostile to developing economies, making debt-driven financing more expensive and unsustainable. According to him, available data for 2024 show developing countries paid $163 billion in debt service compared to $42 billion in overseas development assistance and $97 billion in foreign direct investment. Edun stressed that Nigeria must now rely on its own revenue-generating capacity to fund development rather than continue borrowing in an era of high global interest. Join us for this very important conversation on Breakfast Central this morning is Chief Economist at SPM Professionals, Mr. Paul Alaje. A warm welcome to you, sir, and thanks for joining us this morning.
Yeah, thank you so very much for having me.
Now, the chairman of the Senate Committee on Appropriations, Olamilekan Adeola, was reported to have said that continued loans are unavoidable due to weak revenue inflows and huge development needs. Some experts have said, are we not even borrowing enough? Have we not crossed the threshold? So how can Nigeria ensure that unavoidable new borrowing is directed only to productive projects that can repay themselves?
Yeah, thank you once again for having me. I think that what we are borrowing today it's quite high, even though the debt to revenue in Nigeria, we have seen debt service to revenue in Nigeria, it's also increasing. At least we have seen an over 20% increase in debt service to revenue. And when you look at what the state, what was credited to the Minister of Finance, debt service to states has significantly increased just in 2 years. These has made it very necessary for most states, as well as the federal government, to have a rethink if foreign loans, especially, should still be a major window of closing our gaps. That's our budget deficit. The advice, therefore, will be, what are the new ways, what are other modalities of financing some of the government critical projects without necessarily going for loan? But we need to agree on something. Financing for recurrent expenditure should be totally discouraged. This is what we've seen over the years, where government submits budget for passage into law by the National Assembly, and we have over 70% of that budget being recurrent expenditure. And after that, you see less than 30% being capital expenditure. In fact, last year budget, what we saw was that of the 70% that was supposed to be for of the capital expenditure, 70% of the 30% capital was not met. We saw the circular issued by government, where government had said that that should be rolled over into 2026 budget. And this is what, of course, we have seen that is now in place. The challenge here, the challenge for many people here will be that when we borrow, what do we do with such money? So such money still find their ways into recurrent expenditure, partly because we are not generating enough, even though we have seen some increment in our revenue and our revenue targets. We have seen what FRS have done, what customs have done, among others, government revenue generating agencies. But what I can tell you is that as we speak, our revenue target is very low, and we need to look at other options of generating revenue. First, we also need to consider our pattern of spend. I think our pattern of spend is humongously in favor of recurrent expenditure. And if you continue to finance recurrent expenditure, you are going to have low public investment into the system, into the economy. And this affects both the states and the federal government. So it's important for us to have a rethink. If it is not necessary, it should not be spent. At the end of the day, what matters is when you borrow, where do you put it? Are you putting it on capital, which is very important, or you are putting it on administrative capital, which in textbooks, many people will still post it as recurrent, but in the case of Nigeria, we post administrative capital as capital expenditure, or we are running it on wasting assets. Not that they are not assets, but they are wasting assets. For instance, borrowing to buy vehicles, to change vehicles. I saw what trended in one of the southwest states, where I think one of the human rights persons on social media have posted the budget of the state. I've done some analysis to his own knowledge, and you know, you will be worried how Nigerians have started paying more attention into how their lives are governed. I must tell you that if we must borrow at all, it should be capital expenditure. It should be productive capital expenditure that we know that it can influence more revenue to government. For instance, building roads where government knows that where government know that those roads, when the road is built, people can pay, not necessarily toll, but the value of ground rent around the area would improve, and it brings more revenue to governments. Two, we also need to make environment sustainable for people. We have seen that new tax law that have been passed into law, even though there are a bit of concerns whether, in the public place, whether the National Assembly eventually has concurred. We are going on with what has been passed. Some headquarters have said, oh, the tax law has been passed, so is good for us to continue. And I've even seen one or two states have said they are continuing with it, while some are saying they are still waiting for National Assembly. It's better to come to the public domain to actually state where the position is. This tax law would also help improve revenue, especially funds coming from the rich and those that might have not been paying before now. It will also help to boost. But do I think this will be sufficient to close the gap for both the state and federal government, as envisaged by the Honorable Minister? I doubt. I think we still need something dramatic to be done in terms of revenue inflows into the covers of the government.
Okay, Mr. Alaje, just yesterday there was a budget defense from different parastatal, different ministries, and we did see that of Ajaokuta still play out. I don't know if you're aware, you saw the video of Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan, where she was trying to ensure that she gets more information from the Minister of Steel, and not forgetting to fellow senators, of which it was debunked. She was, pulled back. And industry, or better still, one of Nigeria's assets, just like the Ajaokuta Steel Company, is one that has continued to gulp lump sum funds, money, year in, year out. And you now have the minister coming out as well to state yesterday that the government is looking to sell some of its assets. Is this necessary at this time? And what will this do to help relieve, as it were, the current situation the government finds itself, which is trying to get money? Yeah, go on.
Yeah, thank you so very much. I must say that Nigeria's story is a very sad one. We built some of the assets and industry, to my mind, maybe we don't even have interest in using them in the first instance. I really don't know why. I give you an instance, NNPCL. I'll come back to your question. About 2 years ago, I was invited by some media houses. I think I had this conversation with your colleague, I think 11 or 12 o'clock bells. Business show. Yes, on the business show, where, government is saying, shame on naysayers, some, maybe not government directly, but some persons related, connected with government. And we had our worries that you cannot have a refineries that work in this manner, where the cost of production of per liter of diesel is more expensive than importing diesel. Just a year after all the billion, you can go back and rewind some of the things you discuss on this show. Just go back and check, because you say it every day. We are so used to it, but go back, check the headlines. How much government spent to bring back that refinery that is dysfunctional initially. So check Nigeria's democracy. A president, many years before now, felt it's important for us to sell this. When we can still get one or two, when we can still get some meaningful output and we can manage it, let's sell it. While the private sector guys come, invest heavily in the same refinery, and we can have the output, and we can also have revenues come from it. Was that done? The answer is no. Another president came, reversed it. So going back to Ajaokuta, Technology, today's technology has since passed the technology that we have in Ajaokuta. To my mind, can we still rescue Ajaokuta not as public assets? I have advised government for some of the critical assets, we can model what we have in NLNG, where government have some shares, but definitely not majority of the shares, so that it will not become instrument of the state, an instrument of budget. Private sector have an interest. That interest is profits. Without making output, you cannot have the profits. Without production, you cannot earn profit, except it's through corrupt means. What does that mean? If government is willing to partner with private sector to hold majority of the shares, then whatever belongs to government will be given to the government. Meanwhile, private sector will produce, we can reduce our import dependency on steel and other things. Today, what we have seen is that even though Ajaokuta is not producing any steel, we have a full-fledged army working there. And are there any? The answer is yes. What are they producing? Nothing. Go to the refineries, even though government say, oh, I've heard that NPCL said, oh, that refinery, we cannot continue with it. But we still have a whole army working there, producing. Not producing. But we still have them there. They are still in the budget 2026 we are discussing. What I have seen generally in the public space is humongous amount of waste. That's what I've seen majorly and generally in the public service. And if we don't do something about it, honestly, we'll keep budgeting, we'll keep borrowing, either from public or private sector, either from foreign borrowing or local borrowing. We'll still keep borrowing until we are able to do something substantial about our spendings, about productivity, which I'm not sure that we're actually ready to do something about them now.
That's a tough one.
So, you've talked about the numbers, and you were talking about personnel. I just want to give context to that, because we're seeing that for 2024, still referencing Ajaokuta, still 4.45 billion naira total. 2025, 6.81 billion naira total. Personnel costs accrued to 6.21 billion naira. And for 2026, 6.69 billion naira total. Personnel costs to 6.04 billion naira. What we're seeing is that allocations have risen sharply. So where do we go from here in terms of being able to ask for accounts? We did see yesterday at the budget defense how there was some sort of heated argument between the minister, the senator in charge of the committee for Ministry of Steel, as well as the senator representing Kogi Central. It seemed very heated. So how do we go forward from here? How do we hold them to account? And is there a possibility that these are areas that we can look at converting whatever funds might be, quote unquote, wasted there to other sectors that genuinely need them, and maybe reduce our dependency on borrowing?
It is a very good question. Let me thank all of you for bringing this to the public domain. First, we must understand that our prosperity as a nation, our greatness as Nigerians, and most importantly, our development is tied to Ajaokuta. See, because of Dangote refineries, so you see, some of us, when we talk, sometimes I must tell you that I'm even tired of talking. Dangote refinery alone, look at what it did to the stability of exchange rates. Just imagine, as Nigerians, that we are still importing 100% PMS to this nation. We are still importing 100% of diesel. NPCL agreed that Dangote has helped to substitute the importation by 50%. Dangote is saying, no, we have done more. But let's agree with NPCL. Imagine what we are importing. Go to Ajaokuta. Do you know the volume of steel that Nigeria imports? From the building you are to where I am, and everybody watching us, you have one steel or the other, the way you have cement. Imagine we're importing cement to Nigeria. It will show you where our exchange rate will be. So if you are talking of development, you are talking of prosperity, you are talking of growth, you are talking of change, you are talking of a great nation, you cannot substitute your steel industry. You cannot substitute. You cannot depend on. And you even want to be a nation, giant of Africa, a nation that other nations will depend on. It is very critical. Now, if it is critical, and we have some technology, even though some of them are obsolete, does it mean that industries or factories that are obsolete are abandoned and a fresh one is built? I don't think so. I don't think so. As someone that produced myself, there is room for upgrade. There is room for reassembling, creating new assembly line along those ones that can fill some. What does that mean? What it means, therefore, is that if government cannot produce, cannot manage this, can we allow private sector to come? And this is the reason. In private sector, you have to report your production. We have to measure your performance. I don't know if this is applicable in public sector, but I doubt. Who is measuring the performance of those that are there? How are the performances measured? What is the KPIs of measurement? Okay, if somebody does not produce, what do? You move them to another ministry. But is that what is obtainable in private sector? So this is production. Now we have seen it in the case of refinery. We have seen it in the case of telecom. Remember, we have NITEL of this world. So, to my mind, it is challenging for the public sector to run this Ajaokuta steel mill. I don't think that public sector should continue running it. You can see that we had cement. Before now, it was publicly owned. Is it still publicly owned now? What is the supply side of cement in Nigeria? And what is the impact on our exchange rates? So, but unlike government just coming and throwing away the whole thing to the to private sector, I also don't believe in that extreme. I think government should retain some shares in those in the mill, in the steel mill, while they give majority, about 55-60% to private sector, and see what we can make of that.
Now, Mr. Alaje, you've spoken quite extensively on this issue of debt reliance today during the course of our conversation. But let's look at what some of the things you've highlighted. You said the NRS is generating record revenue. You also spoke about customs. And so does this mean that you also highlighted the fact that we have we lack fiscal discipline in terms of how we manage our spending. My question to you is, the minister, for the Minister of Finance to highlight this and mention that we have a problem, is he sending the message to the right people that need to hear about this? And who should this message actually be directed to? Because what does he want us to do as ordinary Nigerians?
Well, I think that, yeah, the minister is communicating with his team members by extension in NRS. And so NRS responsibility is key, generate revenue and only watch how it is spent, not control how it is spent. I think the minister is a member of Federal Executive Council. That's where you have all the state governors and you have the key officers representing the president. That is where that conversation should be taken to. That is where decisions are made. The people that influence what happened in election, not all of them, because opposition also have access to some. That is where we should have that conversation if truly we will make tremendous impact in fiscal life. Fiscal discipline is very important. I cannot totally say that we are really disciplined with our fiscal life. I can tell you that we need to do more because of the pattern of our budget. It says everything. We are not totally, we are not disciplined enough the way it should be. What is expected is that for our recurrent expenditure, we should at least be able to generate that in the economy. This economy should be able to give us recurrent expenditure, and not just for the federal government, even for the state government. So if we need to support or if we need to borrow at all, it should be for key capital expenditure. Now, all debt service, unlike what I saw in 2022, 2021, 2022, where part of our borrowing was even used to service debt. that was a very dangerous position that we were at the time, you know. But when you look at the position we are today, it's not yet in a perfect situation, because what debt service to revenue at the national level, and that is combining federal and state, what it should be that economics prescribe is 33.3%. This is what it should be. Where we are today is more than double of 33.3%. It's a worry to everybody. So NRS will do its bit. We have seen significant increase in what NRS did. They surpassed their target last year, but that we must also underline that was in Naira terms. If you convert what we are making today to what we made some years back in dollar terms, the percentage increase is less than 7%. The percentage increase. But in Naira terms, because what Naira was that time is not what Naira is today. Again, look at what is shared at FAR. We have said so much about, we are sharing huge revenue at FAR. Is that correct? Correct. But is it very correct? I doubt. Because when you check what we shared in dollar terms some years back, that's about 5, 7, 8 years back, and what we are sharing today, the percentage increase is also very, very minimal. So at the end, we must know that economics are connected. Fiscal policies, monetary policy, they are intertwined, they affect one another. And this, of course, when we start having this holistic view of the economy, then perhaps it will guide the kind of policy that we make.
Well, I seem to have, we've talked about the economical aspect of all of this. We've looked at how it impacts on every single sphere of the economy. But I think it's time, I'd like for us to ask questions pertaining to the people. Because Nigerians, if you check online, you see a cross-section of Nigerians who are asking, okay, fine, the economy is going to rebound, there are challenges of not borrowing anymore. What about us, the people on the streets? They do have a few questions to ask. But I'll ask you, Mr. Alaje, to please grant us a few more minutes of your time. We'll go on a quick break. When we come back, we'll look at very key questions that Nigerians like yourself are indeed asking. Thanks for staying with us here on Breakfast Central. If you just tuned in, we are discussing key issues affecting Nigeria's economy, and with a recent statement made by the minister talking about Nigeria needs to possibly stop borrowing because of the current situation it finds itself. Our guest is Dr. Paul Alaje, who's here with us still. I just want to show you a video, because right now we've asked all the questions. Well, maybe not all, but we've been able to cover at least 85% of the questions we want to ask. But I think it's now time for us to go to the people's question. And part of the people's question is what I want to show to you on the screen. So please take a look at this video, and that would necessitate the next question I'm about to ask. All right, so the video you see there is the, well, we could say, would you say it's a motorcade or the convoy
it's a motorcade this time.
of the FCT minister? And take a look at the number of cars. You can't really count them. This is not the president. This is not the governor. This is the FCT minister.
These are beyond cars. They are vehicles.
And these are not just ordinary cars. These are cars that cost an arm and a leg. So, Mr. Paul Alaje, let me come back to you now, having seen this video. Out of the people's question, which is what we want to start doing here on the program, the people are asking, all these monies that are being spent, how come public officials are still living la vida loca, but yet Nigerians have to bear the brunt? So can you share economically how this is balanced?
It's never balanced. This can never be balanced. The perception in the mind of people is stronger than reality. Some persons may say that these are private cars, they are not government cars. But from the video we saw, we can see some law enforcement agents. We can also see some other things. The question I think Nigeria should first ask is that, apart from politics and public service, where else has these individuals worked? What have they done? If they have not, then you should know that perhaps the monies or the revenues we are talking about is purely public fund. And if it is public fund, then there should be accounts. But you see, the kind of democracy we run, the people themselves have surrendered their powers to whosoever they have voted for, or they have allowed to be voted for, or who the court says they have voted for. Therefore, if we must maintain decorum as a people, which I encourage, which has been what I've said on all the platforms, we have to be careful regarding who we then vote for and who they say that we vote for in the subsequent election. If not, more of this will still be seen. It's not the first time we are seeing some public official with open display of wealth, which I don't think, as a personal philosophy, I don't think it's good to have open display of wealth, especially when you are in public domain. We've seen countries like Singapore ban things like this simply because of the perception. People cannot be going through economic quagmire, and we are saying that there is no fund, we have to manage, Nigeria needs to adjust, you need to adjust to the reality. But when people observe how some government officials are living, I tell you, instead of going to productive sector, everybody wants to be in politics. They want to be local government chairmen and all of those things. For most states, the most thriving sector, at least among the top 5 sectors, is political sector. Which country has political sector ever lifted across the world? I know most countries that political sector are sent behind among Community of Nations. I really don't know anyone that has really reigned supreme. From those that are in Europe, those that are in Asia, those that are in Middle East, and even one of the African countries that, 3 of African countries that people are referencing as relatively better example. Those that went to the Nations Cup and came back, and so Nigeria is the Act of Africa, when they saw a few things in Morocco and they came back to Nigeria, some of them started having a rethink. So I think Nigeria needs to clearly rethink the kind of country we want to have and the kind of economy we want to have, because people are getting even more emboldened as to what they do with their public life, knowing that there is perhaps there is nothing anybody will do to them. And if you leave our economics like that, instead of breathing strong system and structure, what we'll do is what we have always done: building strong men. And strong men does not deliver a nation. Strong men does not deliver a people. What deliver people is structure and system. That's what makes them great.
All right, we're fast coming to the end of this conversation, but I mean, since we've decided to talk a little bit personal, Joe had showed the convoy of the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory. We also had a video that went viral some days ago. We may not be playing the video, but I also wanted to ask if it's also another video that should cause us to pause and reflect as a people, or would you consider that a personal life of a serving senator? There was a video of him and the woman in a private jet where he was giving her feet a massage, and I'm sure you've seen the video of
I saw the video.
Adam Soshomole. Yeah, there are those who would argue that it's his personal life, but as a public servant who's been put there by Nigerians, who's been voted into office, is that a video that deserves an explanation? Because till today, I don't recall that being addressed. I did see him yesterday at the budget defense meeting where he sort of went into an argument with the Minister of Works. But does that video deserve an explanation to Nigerians?
Of course. Of course. Once you are in public space, people will ask you questions. Those that may not be asked questions are the one being asked questions. Those are in private sector. If you're in public space, people will ask you questions. How did you do this? You were governor for 8 years. Was it when you were governor? You declared your asset at a time. Can we look at? So question must be asked. Nigeria is a state where once you are in the ruling party, you have answered all the questions in the past, the current question and the future question. And that is why you see most governors, once they are in opposition and they don't want to answer some questions, this may not be the only reason. They follow whosoever is in power. I see a lot of people question, why are governors moving to the ruling party? Although this is the first time governors will move. People don't want to answer questions. So if they don't want to answer questions, there is the place of immunity beyond the one our constitution provided for. It is the ruling party. And once you are there, you have minimal question to answer. And that is why I've always called for constitutional review. I've always called for constitutional review that if you must change your political party, if he has appointed you into an executive position, you must stay there or you leave the position. Let the party that brought you in nominate another person. 2, even if you are not in office, minimum of 2 years before the new election, if you have not cross-carpeted and you want to cross-carpet, you cannot vie for any position in a political party. Thirdly, all political parties must agree for us to have a national development plan such that whosoever win as president, governor, minister, honorable, appointed minister, whatever appointment of political stuff we have, what will be important is what is documented in our national development plan, which will be implemented by federal, by state, and by the local government. Can I tell you the truth? Until we do that, don't worry, we'll keep managing it. And when we manage it, we see some growth today, we see some trough tomorrow, we see some progress today, we see some withdrawal tomorrow. At the end of the day, we'll ask, don't worry, is Nigeria a go better? But the question is when?
When? That's a big question. Well, on that note, I want to say thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Alaje. It's been a tough one and a big conversation that we'll continue to have. Hopefully, like we always use the word hopefully, though hope is not a strategy in the words of all of us here in-house on Breakfast Central.
Hope is the name of a governor in the south.
Yes, and it's followed by Uzodinma. We don't remember it saying hope and Nigeria, in tandem. But thank you so much for your time, and we do wish you another nice day ahead.